of inductees. Did you know that Cam Newton was nominated for that class? Did you know that the Heisman Trophy winner from Auburn and national champion did not make the cut? What are we even doing? As we discuss. Something's on fire. I think it's me thinking about a college football Hall of Fame that does not include Cameron Newton. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. This is Scarbo Knows. Appreciate you tuning in wherever you're watching on the Sidelines.live network or whether you're watching on YouTube. And we always request respectfully that if you are watching on YouTube, that you subscribe to the channel. It helps us out. We appreciate it. As Bluto says, in Animal House, don't cost nothing, but it does help us, and so we do appreciate it. A special thank you to Brendan Martin, our executive producer on the Sidelines.live network, and also to our sponsor, Money Management Services. Since Services firm. Oh, we jumped the gun a little bit. You'll hear a little more from my friends, the Rice family, later in the show. Any financial services needs that you might have. Are you contemplating retirement? They can help you with that and many, many more subjects. They're a family-owned, fee-only financial services firm, so check them out. There you see the QR code on the screen. They're good friends of mine, have been for a long time. They will take great care of you. Okay, time to dive in to a subject that has gone semi-viral on social media, at least on my social media. Did Cam get scammed? The 2026 College Football Hall of Fame class was announced in the last 24 hours, and Cam Newton was not a member. He was nominated, but he was not voted in. And I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around this. Having seen Cam perform throughout the 2010 season at Auburn, having covered most of his games that season, having covered all of the things that went on off the field at Auburn that year, as many people remember, not fondly, for different reasons. But I'm still shaking my head, scratching my head, racking my brain, trying to figure out how Cam Newton did not get voted into the Hall of Fame at the first possible moment. And this whole subject, this whole conversation started with a tweet. I was at a Samford basketball game last night, and I was just checking Twitter during a timeout, and I noticed that the class from the Hall of Fame had been announced, and Cam Newton wasn't in it. So I tweeted this. Wait. So Cam Newton, who authored the single greatest season in college football history for Auburn in 2010, was not voted into the College Football Hall of Fame on the first ballot. If he's not a Hall of Famer, there is no such thing. Now, this sparked a great debate. First of all, I fully believe that. I have believed since January of 2011, which was the month in which Auburn went to Arizona, played Oregon in the BCS championship game, won the game, put the cherry on top of an extraordinary season, both collectively and individually. And I concluded, even going into that game, before they ever played Oregon, that if you compared what Cam Newton did, that it was the greatest individual season in college football history. Now, this is subjective, of course. Your opinion may vary. I hear a lot of Barry Sanders when this discussion comes up. Since 2011, I've heard Joe Burrow on many occasions. We're going to get into that comparison a little later in the show. Obviously, great players that had great years at different times for different teams. But what Cam did with that team, and we're going to break it down for you again as we go through this show, and we're going to demonstrate why it was the greatest individual season ever. Now, I didn't expect that me offering this comment on my X account was going to go viral, was going to spark such a visceral reaction from so many people. Now, I knew going back to 2010, in the moment, Cam Newton has long been a lightning rod. There are few people that live in the middle of the road on Cam Newton Avenue. You either love him and respect him as a player and or as a person, or you can't stand the sight of him. And you think he's a freak from another planet. You think he's a liar and a cheater. You think he's just a bad dude. Of course, my question to you would be, how do you know? You ever talked to him? You ever been around him? Have you ever witnessed him do something bad to another person? I would suggest not. But this discussion went wild. And it just showed that 15 years after his one-and-done season at Auburn, Cam still stirs the drink. Cam still stirs emotions. Look at some of the reaction that I got on Twitter from different portions of the college football universe. Someone whose handle is always Sco Ducks, obviously an Oregon fan. Oregon, of course, lost to Auburn in that 2011 BCS championship game. He said, I can't stand Cam Newton, but there has never been a team in the history of college football that has been truly carried by one player more than that Auburn team. Right on, Sco Ducks. Ryan Patrick, who I assume, well, I don't know if he's an Auburn fan or an Alabama fan. Sometimes that matters in this conversation. He said, look at the Auburn roster, especially the offense. I think Cam's lost his marbles in his post-NFL career, but he basically won a national championship single-handed. And then, chiming in from the Gator Nation, one of the great wide receivers in Florida history, who made the fun and gun as much fun as it was under Steve Spurrier, Jaquez Green retweeted my tweet and commented, yes, best ever. And I'm going to trust Jaquez Green's opinion on who might or might not be the greatest player ever, who might or might not have put together the greatest season ever. And might I add that a guy named Tim Tebow played at the University of Florida, who, if you look over an entire career, I don't think you can argue with. He's certainly on the short list of greatest college careers and greatest college players ever. Cam Newton's college career, yes, he won a national championship at Blinn Junior College before he got to Auburn. So he wasn't a one-hit wonder. But, of course, before Blinn, he was in Gainesville. He played for Florida. He was Tebow's backup and supposed to be successor. Some things went wrong, and Cam ended up at Blinn on his way to Auburn. But this is just a tiny sliver of an example of the feedback, the blowback that I received from folks when I suggested that it's a travesty that Cam was not inducted into the Hall of Fame this time around. So who got in? Who made the cut? 18 different players were inducted, 4 different coaches. We're not going to go through all of them because you wouldn't recognize all of them. I don't recognize all of them. And I've been covering college football for 4 decades. But here are some highlights among the players. Mark Ingram, of course, who won Alabama's first Heisman Trophy in 2009 as part of Nick Saban's first national championship team in Tuscaloosa. He was inducted. Garrison Hurst, great running back for Georgia. He got in. 2 great defensive linemen, Aaron Donald from Pitt and Demikong Suh from Nebraska. I had Suh on my Heisman ballot back in the day. Not first, but he was on the ballot. He was a one-man wrecking crew, as was Donald. They both got in. Peter Warrick, the outstanding wide receiver. I think he returned some kicks, too, led Florida State to the 1999 national championship, Bobby Bowden's second and final national title with the Seminoles. All certainly deserving of being inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. But I thought a fun exercise would be to compare the 2009 Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama, who just got inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame or just got named. The induction ceremony will be later in the year. and the 2010 Heisman Trophy winner from the other SEC school in the state of Alabama, Auburn University, and Cam Newton. So let's take a look. Let's make a comparison between Cam Newton and Mark Ingram. Now, first things first, let's be honest. A quarterback touches the ball on every play. A running back doesn't. Newton played 1 year at Auburn. Mark Ingram played 3 years in Tuscaloosa. But these are some fun facts about the two of their careers in the SEC. In 1 year at Auburn, Cam Newton accounted for more touchdowns and more total yards than Mark Ingram did in 3 years at the University of Alabama. Cam had 51 touchdowns in that 1 year. Mark had 46 over 3 years. Cam accounted for 4,369 total yards, passing, rushing, and receiving. He caught a couple of passes for Auburn that year, one for a touchdown against Ole Miss. Ingram accounted for 3,976 yards. Cam, of course, led Auburn to a 14-0 record, perfect 1,000 winning percentage. Alabama was 36-5 in Ingram's 3 years, 2008, 2009, 2010. He won one national title, as did Cam at Auburn. Again, two great players. I voted for them both for the Heisman. Well, I had Ingram second on my ballot in 2009. That is another story for another day, and I got much heat and hate from Alabama fans because I put Rolando McClain, the middle linebacker from Alabama, at number 1 on my ballot that year. Another story for another day. I've told it before. I'll probably tell it again at some point. But it just goes to show you, and I do this not to diminish the career of Mark Ingram. Please don't misunderstand. Mark Ingram was an outstanding college football player, and he had a nice NFL career as well. And I think he's really good as a college football analyst. And I think he's as objective as you can be when he talks about Alabama, even though he doesn't talk about Alabama all the time because he is on Fox, and they cover primarily the Big Ten, not the SEC. And I think Mark does a really nice job there. I think he has a pretty good handle as a former player. He walks a pretty nice line on being objective, but also being loyal to his former program. More so than another former Alabama running back named Damian Harris. That's a subject for another day for sure. But this just shows you the impact that Cam Newton had in one single season in the SEC. How he dominated the game, he dominated the landscape, he dominated the conversation. Not always in a positive way. As you know, we'll get to that in a little bit. But look at that. In 1 year, more yards, more touchdowns than Mark Ingram in 3 years. Okay, you want to have a little more apples to apples comparison? Aside from a quarterback and a running back, how about a quarterback and a quarterback? How about one of the all-time great quarterbacks in the SEC versus another one of the all-time great quarterbacks in the SEC, Joe Burrow? Now, this is a name that every single time I die on this hill and I say that Cam Newton constructed, authored, put together the single greatest season in college football history because of what he did as an individual and how he carried his team, someone immediately throws out, what about Joe Burrow? Look, Joe Burrow was unreal for LSU in 2019. Joe Burrow was surrounded by a cast of future NFL players and future NFL stars. Cam Newton was not. These numbers are striking. Taking out Cam Newton and Joe Burrow, both of whom won Heisman trophies and national championships and became the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Other than Cam Newton, Auburn's 2010 offense had one NFL draft pick. Left tackle Lee Ziemba, a very good college player, was picked in the 7th round of the 2011 NFL draft. Played about 6 games in the NFL, never started one. So not one of the offensive linemen who blocked for Cam Newton in 2010 at Auburn started a game in the NFL. Not one of the skilled players that played alongside Cam Newton at Auburn in 2010 caught a pass in the NFL or carried the ball a single time in the NFL. So no NFL offensive line starts, no NFL catches, no NFL carries, other than Cam Newton on that 2010 Auburn offense. And yet that offense was full of fireworks, primarily because of number 2. Now, look at LSU's offense surrounding Joe Burrow in 2019. Other than Burrow, 8 of the LSU starters in the 2020 national championship game in which they smoked Clemson, 8 other starters were drafted by the NFL. 4 of the 5 offensive linemen, I think, were NFL draft picks. As of today, the latest stats I could find on Pro Football Reference, that offensive line went on to start 192 games in the NFL. And a number of those guys are still playing in the NFL, so that number will rise. The receivers, led by Jordan Jefferson and Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall, 1,274 NFL catches among them. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who played with the Chiefs, won a Super Bowl or 2, if I recall. He was the main running back, of course, for LSU in 2019, and then he was a first-round draft pick, as Justin Jefferson was, as Jamar Chase was. And you put them all together, 497 NFL carries by the running backs at LSU in 2019. So what does this all mean? It means that while Auburn had good college players, I don't want to demean those guys. I don't want to suggest that he was playing with a bunch of guys that he picked up at the YMCA. But they were not great talents. They were not NFL talents. Cam Newton lifted a team so far above its weight class that no one else compares. And as good as Burrow was in 2019, and he was outstanding, he was surrounded by special talents. And there's no comparison. And by the way, yeah, Burrow accounted for over 6,000 yards. Just mind-boggling in 2019. However, if you break it down, in the 9 SEC games that Burrow played in 2019, the 8 regular season games plus the SEC championship game, Burrow accounted for 3,456 total yards. And then if you look at the 9 games SEC games that Cam Newton played in 2010, the 8 regular season games plus the SEC championship game, Cam accounted for 2,815 yards, 2,815 yards, about 600 less than Burrow in SEC play. Touchdowns accounted for in SEC games, Cam 34, Burrow 33. And by the way, in the 15 games that LSU played in 2019/2020, only 3 of them were one-score games. That's how dominant that LSU team was. In the 14 games that Auburn played in 2010-2011, 7 of the 14 were one-score games. Meaning, if Cam Newton weren't Superman, Auburn wouldn't have gone 14-0. Auburn wouldn't have won the SEC West. Auburn wouldn't have advanced to the SEC championship game and nuked Steve Spurrier in South Carolina. And Auburn wouldn't have gone to Arizona and beaten Oregon with its custom Nike uniforms in the BCS championship game. That's how good Cam had to be to take Auburn where he took them. And if you don't believe these numbers, and if you don't believe my memories, let's look at Auburn before Cam Newton and Auburn after Cam Newton. Pretty striking, isn't it? If you're watching on YouTube or on the live stream on sidelines.live, in 2008, Auburn went 5-7, fired Tommy Tuberville. Went 2-6 in the SEC. The next year, Gene Chizik's first season, 8-5 overall, 3-5 in the conference. Which means in the 2 years before Cam Newton, Auburn won 13 games. With Cam Newton in 1 year, they won 14 games and didn't lose one. The 2 years before, they went 13-12. The 2 years before, they went 5-11 in the conference. Cam and the Tigers, of course, went 8-0 in the league. Plus, they won the championship game in Atlanta. All right, what happened after Cam left and became the number 1 pick in the NFL draft in 2011 and 2012? They went 8-5 in 11, 4-4 in the conference. In 2012, they went 3-9 overall, did not win an SEC game, and Gene Chizik got fired. So in the 2 years after Cam, they won 11 games total, 3 fewer than they won in one season. With Cam Newton, they went 11-14 overall, 4-12 in the SEC. Do you see what I'm getting at? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Do you smell what Cam was cooking? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? He was a shooting star. He was a comet across the sky in the plains. He was a power lifter in the way that he carried that team to heights that it didn't even approach before he got there or immediately afterwards. And by the way, since Cam Newton's one and done season at Auburn in 2010, Auburn has been to 2 SEC championship games. They won it in 2013, lost to Georgia in 2017. They've been to 1 national championship game. They came up achingly short against Florida State at the end of the 2013 season, a game that should forever haunt Gus Malzahn. They had that game. They let it get away. They came back and took the lead late, but they gave Jameis Winston too much time for a final drive, and the Seminoles won it all. But Auburn hasn't been the same since. I'm not sure Auburn was ever quite the same before Cam. Auburn had better teams overall before Cam Newton got there. They had far better talent overall before Cam Newton got there. Certainly the way Pat Dye and company recruited, they were better at spot after spot after spot than the 2010 Auburn team. But that team was full of seniors that had seen coaching changes. They'd seen losses. They'd seen losing seasons. And there was some special character on that team, led by the most special character this state, this conference, and I think college football in total has ever seen in Cam Newton. Okay. So, why is Cam Newton not in the College Football Hall of Fame? You know, the rule is you have to wait 10 years after your last college season. His last college season was 2010. It's been 15 years since. He was just now nominated this past year. You have to be nominated to get on the ballot. And then folks from the National Football Foundation vote. People from the the National Football or the College Football Writers Association. I'm not a member, obviously. I can't even think of the designation. They vote, and then the National Football Foundation has an honors committee, I believe they called it, and they make the final determination of who gets in. So what are they thinking? I have an idea of what they might be thinking. Let's look at a picture of Cam then and now. There you see him on the left, sitting in front of the Heisman Trophy, clean cut, big smile, wearing his Auburn jersey, number 2, looking like a lot of other college football players. No visible tattoos, no tattoos at all, I don't believe. And then look at Cam on the right. And that's a picture, an Auburn University photo from this past season when Cam had his jersey retired at Auburn. Now, Cam has an unusual fashion sense, shall we say. He has an unusual taste in haircuts. Kind of looks like an octopus climbing over his visor in that photo. But hey, to each his own. Style is an individual thing. Style's not character. What you look like on the outside isn't who you are on the inside necessarily. Sometimes they jibe. Sometimes they don't. But I have a sense, and I see this in the blowback that I've gotten from people who disagree with me, who don't think Cam Newton should be in the College Football Hall of Fame for a variety of reasons, because he's a cheater. Really? Okay. Yes, he made mistakes at the University of Florida. He did things you shouldn't have done. We're not going to relitigate that. We're going to talk about what he did at Auburn, what he didn't do at Auburn, what people accused him of at Auburn, and what the NCAA never proved he did at Auburn. And again, we're not going to relitigate whether Auburn paid Cam Newton to play football there. It's kind of a quaint conversation today, given NIL and Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback, saying that Tennessee, Miami, and Ole Miss were offering him $4 million, $5 million, $6 million to go into the transfer portal, which he did not do, play one more season of college football for them, not for Alabama. And he turned that down because Ty Simpson is a man of character. He's a man of his word. And it meant something to him to play college football at Alabama. And it wouldn't be the same for him in his own mind to play in another jersey. If he was going to play college football, he was going to play it at Alabama. Ty's different in a good way. I would say Cam is different in a good way as well. And all of the accusations that were hurled at him and his dad, some of them hurled at his dad were true. He did discuss getting paid by Mississippi State or someone representing Mississippi State to get Cam to play there for Dan Mullen rather than go to Auburn. But what I do, and look, I was a full-time daily columnist, sports columnist for the Birmingham News and AL.com at the time. I covered this story every single day for far more than a year. And I can't sit here in 2026 and tell you to an absolute certainty that I know whether Cam Newton did get paid a nickel to play football at Auburn or whether he didn't. But I can tell you this. I've also had good sources tell me completely different conclusions of the whole story. I had one person tell me, no, Auburn did not pay anyone connected to Cam Newton or Cam Newton himself, and if they had, I would know about it. I had another great source tell me, you'll never know how they did it. So you figure it out. But what I do know is this, and this is not in dispute. The NCAA investigated for more than a year. They conducted what I called at the time, and is still appropriate today, a 13-month colonoscopy of the Auburn football program surrounding the recruitment of Cameron Newton. And the NCAA, led by a bulldog of an investigator, I know who the person was, they turned over every stone they could think to turn over. They requested every bank record, bank statement, phone record that they could think to request, and they were given pretty much carte blanche. Everything they wanted, everything they asked for, they got. And still, somehow, they never charged Cam Newton or Auburn with a single major violation. Yes, Cam was declared ineligible at one point late in the season. Auburn appealed for his reinstatement, and it was quickly granted by the NCAA. If the cheating was so obvious, if so many of you are so sure, and you know in your heart of hearts that Auburn did something against the rules to get Cam Newton to play quarterback there, maybe you should go work for the NCAA or the College Sports Commission or whoever is allegedly trying to mine the store, if anyone is. Maybe you should go work for the FBI. Because people whose job it was to find out that information at the time, who had access to far more information than you or I have had since, they came up empty. And again, I don't know to a certainty what did or didn't happen in his recruitment. What I do know to a certainty is that he was the best player in the country, hence the Heisman Trophy. And it would have been even more of a landslide if these accusations hadn't popped up. I do know, at least in my opinion, that I have never seen a college football player have more impact on one team for one season than Cam Newton. And I've seen Derek Thomas play outside linebacker for Alabama. I've seen Derrick Henry run the ball for Alabama. I've seen Tim Tebow play quarterback for Florida. I've seen Darren McFadden run the ball for Arkansas. I could go on and on. I've seen so many great players at so many positions at so many schools. And none of them did for one team for 1 year what Cam Newton did for Auburn. So I have a question for all of you amateur detectives, NCAA investigators, psychological evaluators. Who are you to judge? Who are you to judge Cam Newton? You ever had a conversation with him? You ever been around him? I have. Not going to say I'm close. I'm not going to say I could pick up the phone and call him and he would answer. But I did follow him that season very closely. I also have noticed that all of the people, and there were many of you, if you will acknowledge it, who contended throughout 2010 into 2011 and 2012, et cetera, that Cam Newton was a one-and-done mercenary. He didn't care about Auburn University. He only cared about Cam Newton. He didn't care about his teammates. He only cared about Cam Newton. He will never darken Auburn's door the moment he steps off that campus after his last college football game. You said it. I heard it. You were wrong. Cam Newton, of course, was there for the national championship celebration. That was an interesting post-game or post-event interview afterwards. Not only that, though, he went back to class. He went back to school. While he was in the NFL, while he was racking up records for rushing yards by a quarterback, rushing touchdowns by a quarterback, winning an MVP, taking the Panthers to the Super Bowl, he was taking classes in the offseason at Auburn. And in 2015, he earned his Auburn degree. And 10 years later, in 2025, Auburn retired his jersey. In the interim, Auburn built a statue of him and Bo Jackson and Pat Sullivan, its other Heisman Trophy winners. Stands outside the stadium today. They retired his jersey, which is a rare honor. And if Cam Newton had done anything at Auburn to bring Auburn into ill repute, if Auburn felt like Cam Newton was not all in, that he was not part of the family, would they have retired his jersey? Would they have built the Heisman statues? Would they have honored him in the way that they've continued to honor him? Would Cam continue to come back to Auburn as he's done through the years? Of course not. But so many people have misjudged him through the years, and they look at the package and they don't like what they see. They don't like the hair. They don't like the clothes. He looks like George Clinton from Funkadelic. Maybe he wandered into a thrift store and came out with whatever he could find. There's a lot of reasons for a lot of you not to like Cam Newton. But what I suspect for many of you is that reason number one is he embarrassed your football team. And if you're a fan of the University of Alabama and you remember what happened on Black Friday in 2010 on a gray, overcast, ugly day in Tuscaloosa, Cam Newton faced the most hostile crowd I have ever experienced in my career. Those people in Bryant-Denny Stadium that day, they didn't just want to beat Auburn. They didn't just want to embarrass Cam Newton. It had a Christians versus Lions vibe. Now, I wasn't there in the Roman Coliseum back in the day, but I imagine that's what it was like. They threw Monopoly money at him when he came out of the tunnel. The PA, the official DJ in the stadium, played Take the Money and Run and Son of a Preacher Man during pregame. He later lost his position. The DJ did, that is. And, of course, Cam's dad was a preacher. And then Alabama takes a 24-0 lead. And there was no way that any normal human being playing quarterback in college football could have turned that tide. Cam Newton did. He threw 3 touchdown passes. He ran for another touchdown. He led a comeback from 0-24 to 28-27. They call it the Cam back. maybe the greatest individual performance against the longest odds that I've ever witnessed in my career. I keep piling these facts upon stats, upon memories to paint a picture for you. If Cam Newton's not a Hall of Famer, there is no such thing as a Hall of Famer. I said it because I meant it. Now, there is a thing, Brendan, if we can pop up the last slide. The National Football Foundation, which is the organization that inducts people into the College Football Hall of Fame, they have criteria. And one of the criteria is not about what you did on the field. Let's look at it. While each nominee's football achievements in college are of prime consideration, his post-football record as a citizen is also weighed. He must have proven himself worthy as a citizen, carrying the ideals of football forward into his relations with his community and fellow man. What the hell does that mean? Who are you, the National Football Foundation, to judge Cam Newton or Mark Ingram or Peter Warrick or Tim Tebow or Steve Spurrier or whomever as a citizen? What are the ideals of football that you're supposed to carry forward into your relations with the community and your fellow man? Look, football can teach some great lessons. It also can teach some harsh lessons. So who are you to judge whether Cam Newton has been a good citizen or not? Has he been arrested since he left Auburn University? No, he has not. Did he survive a violent car wreck while he was playing in the NFL and a couple of weeks later suit up and play a game for the Carolina Panthers? Yes, he did. Did he fail to dive on a fumble in the Super Bowl and get roundly criticized for it? Yes, he did. Was he short with the media in the postgame after that Super Bowl defeat against one of the best defenses, one of the best defensive fronts ever? Yes, he was. But did Auburn build a statue to him because he won a Heisman Trophy? Did Auburn invite him back and retire his jersey because he won a Heisman Trophy and he led Auburn to a national championship, an undefeated season, when the SEC had people like Nick Saban at the height of his powers opposing him? Yes, Auburn did that too. So it's always amused me when groups like the Heisman Trophy folks, or now the National Football Foundation with the Hall of Fame, when they want to judge your character, and they're not even talking about character here. They're talking about your worthiness as a citizen. I would like to see someone give me some concrete criteria to define what makes a good citizen. That's a great subject for debate in America today, and we are not going to go there. But we are going to end here. Cam Newton is a College Football Hall of Famer. He no doubt will be a College Football Hall of Famer at some point in the future. But it is an absolute travesty that he is not a College Football Hall of Famer today. Because Cam, in this latest vote, just got scammed. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Hey, I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. This is Scarbo Knows. I really appreciate you watching and listening. Again, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. It's Kevin Scarbinsky Scarbo Knows. Please check out all the great shows on the Sidelines.live network, starting with Rob Brown in the mornings, including the great Buddy Martin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So much great content from so many great insiders with great insight. And check out our sponsor next. Let's hear a word from Money Management Services. Again, the Rice family, great friends of mine. They'll take good care of you. Have a great day, everyone. See you.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.